Welcome to our home for the night.
So today, Natalie's Random Adventure is a cute little town in Arizona where they've got buggy rides, they've got pictures, they've got cute little shops, tons of restaurants, a theater, and there's something else we were going to see. Kind of like a historic, something, it was a big deal. Honey, do you remember what it was we were going to go do today? Okay, you guessed it. We're at Tombstone today. We're going to hear all the history. We're going to see all the stuff. So come along with us. Well, right off the bat, it's important to know that Tombstone is a real, actual town. People lived, died, and worked here, and they actually do still to this day. But back then, Tombstone was a very harsh place to live. And so record keeping wasn't always their highest priority. As a result, the history of Tombstone becomes quite murky at times. So you'll hear people declare absolutely this is fact or that is fact. We've done a lot of research and we're going to be here to tell you the different stories that we've heard and the different versions. And we're going to leave it to you to decide which one's history and which one's urban legend. So here in Tombstone, you're going to hear over and over and over and even over again how Tombstone got its name.
And it became a dropping off or stopping off point for settlers coming back east looking for land. One of those was a fellow by the name of Edward Lawrence Shefflin. Ed Shefflin was a prospector. He'd roam the hills and desert all day long looking for silver.
Does anybody here know who Ed Shefflin is? He's the reason you're here. He was founding father. He was out here in 1877. He was in the hills of Tombstone. He was looking for the silver and the gold. He knew it was
started
here.
by letting you know why Tombstone's here and why we're called Tombstone. Tombstone and the whole area around here was about mining for silver. So we do give a fella now by the name of Ed Shefflin credit for being the original founder of Tombstone.
But here's just a quick gist of it. So Ed Shefflin, he was a prospector, and there was a military base that was kind of based here to help with the Indian problems. He was good at scouting, but he really just wanted to mine. So he traded off his ability to scout for some protection. So he would go off and mine in the mountains, and his friends would tease him and be like, "What are you doing up there? What are you going to find? All you're going to find is your tombstone." So when he did strike it rich, he thought it would be funny to name his mine Tombstone. So when people found out about his mine and his claim and how well it was, people started to swarm here. And back then it was called Goose Flats. Now it's Tombstone.
I told you Tombstone was a rough, tough town. By the end of 1882, they had 110 bars in Tombstone. 3,200 registered ladies of the night. A couple ice cream shops. I guess that right there should pretty much tell you what the cowboys and miners like, right? For sure, the ice cream. On the left, it's the largest building in Tombstone. It is all original, the courthouse. Completed this structure 1882 to the cost of the taxpayers, $50,000. I know that's like millions today, but look at all the hand craftsmanship that went into that building, especially with the tools they had to work with back then. It's still open as a museum, yeah, maybe. In on the left, look over the brick wall and into the courtyard, you will see the gallows. Right there is where they hung 7 men in Tombstone. First 2 were caught for cattle rustling, horse thieving, killed a deputy in doing so. Well, they rounded him up finally. Tombstone was the county seat, brought him here to try him, sentenced to hang, both of them dead right there in that courtyard.
So here in Tombstone, at its peak, it reached estimates of about 20,000 people. Now, Tombstone didn't count everybody, but at that time they had restaurants, theaters, churches, everything that a real town had.
I'm going to show you one of the most visited tourist stops here in Tombstone. The public restrooms.
On the left for 3 blocks, on the right for 2 blocks. This 5-block area was called Tombstone. 450 Chinese lived in this 5-block area. So not any railroad town or mining town during the 1800s. Chinese were a big part of the labor force. This 5-block area then was run by the lady they called China Mary. Want to hire some Chinese labor, that's who you went and talked to. Tell her what kind of jobs you had to do. She would select for you the Chinese to fill those positions. And then you would pay her for their labor. Then she'd turn around and charge the Chinese back for finding them employment. 1/3 of their salary for the next 2 years. China Mary run this 5-block area right here in the right from her home. This is where she lived. She lived right here on the first level. Down below, like a basement or a cellar, is where she had the Chinese massage parlor and an opium den. Around the back of her house here, you can still see some little original rooms back there. That's where she had the Chinese ladies of the night.
That we're going to actually talk about tonight is actually that building right over there that is still open. It is called the Red Buffalo today. If you go into the Red Buffalo, you can get things like cowboy gear, saloon girl stuff. Any of the ladies that want to get tied up, we can do that for you, trust me. They're bulletproof too, just saying. Yeah, can't get a bullet through there. So, go in there for another reason, better known as Campbell and Hatch's Billiards back in the 1800s. Now, when I say the word billiards, do you know what I mean?
Cool.
Sort of.
Tickling the ivories?
Yeah. Sort of. As far as Wyatt and Morgan go, well, they were watching a play called Stolen Kisses over at Shefflin Hall. When Morgan said, I'd love to go shoot a game of billiards, and Wyatt said, nope, not a good idea, because it's after the gunfight at the OK Corral and after our old brother's already been attacked in retaliation for the gunfight. So Morgan has to talk him into it. So they come over here, and they're all the way in the back of that building where there's another set of double doors. And right in front was the billiards table. Morgan is shooting a quiet game of billiards with Bob Hatch, the owner of the building, while Wyatt is sitting along the wall to the back, trying to enjoy a quiet evening before he has to go to work at the Oriental Saloon. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the bottom line is, do you think you would be able to rest, sleep, any of that kind of stuff? If the glass is shattered, bullets are flying, your brother gets shot in the spinal cord, and it severs his spinal cord, it exits his body, and then it enters into the femoral artery of an innocent bystander? Nope. And by the way, the femoral artery, in case you don't know, is a major artery right here at the top of your leg. You got less than 2 minutes before you will bleed to death. In 6 seconds, you're going to pass out from the loss of blood.
The Longhorn place, we ate here actually a few times last time we came here because they get good steak. But it's a cool place here.
guys can do better than that. Welcome to the Oriental! This was my place back in the 1880s. Back when Tombstone was just a lively little silver camp. We were famous from San Francisco to New Orleans. The dangerous place to make your fortune. Arizona in 1880, we had 40,000 people here. 5,000 of which were crammed right there in the dusty old streets right outside these our doors. I made a killing here. But I never killed anyone here. That would have been back in this place of my own. It's right here. It's the Oriental.
Oh, I have to find that just a little bit hard to believe. I was told this very morning a miserable wretch by the name of Milt Joyce at this establishment.
Yeah, I do. Thanks, miserable wretch. And I do own the Oriental, Doc. Yeah.
Oh, I have a thought for you, Milt. Why don't you sell out?
Because it ain't for sale, not at his price or anybody else's. Yeah, what's wrong with you people?
I swear to God, you don't know how to talk to people. You really ought to let me translate for you.
I'm doing just fine. I'm negotiating.
Huh? Negotiate?
Yeah.
Who the hell are you negotiating with?
Well, with Milt back there.
All right, what?
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. What are you doing?
I'm negotiating.
Look, Judge Hurt, my father, he told me how to handle hard cases like that. Said first you gotta get them in the door. You take all their money, then you kick them out.
Johnny was some kind of a wise man.
You know, one time he was one hell of a saloon keeper.
Saloon people don't often very well.
He would be honest with
He
you.
makes a great team.
All right, come on.
Man's got murder on his mind, he better keep an eye on him.
That's a sound policy.
Come on, Frank. I'm done with it.
Let a bad man get a free ride to Boot Hill.
It's gone on long enough. Storms, I've had a belly full of your gas. I told you once you got something on your mind, you best spit it out.
Those slick kids and loose lips. They kiss you.
Well, Sergeant that's why they call you the Undertaker's friend. Not much of a focus. Where was he back? Whoop. I tell you, I sure am going to miss his money.
Virgil Earp applied to become a Mason. He applied to become a Mason. But, ladies and gentlemen, he had his hands in the drinking, the gambling, and the prostitution. Now, which one of those do you think cost him the membership?
The prostitution.
Drinking,
The gambling?
prostitution? That's a completely legal job for a lady to do in the 1800s. It's respectable too. And by the way, I have a business license to walk the streets of Tombstone. So, yes, I do know firsthand it's a respectable job. Now, here's the deal. His brother owned a bar. That is what cost him. It was the drinking that cost him back in the 1800s.
The right side of the trolley, the Tombstone epitaph speak, started by a fella named John Plum in the year 1880. John got the Tombstone in time to have the second newspaper. He also became the mayor of Tombstone. He ended up being one of Wyatt Earp's best friends.
What you doing, baby?
I'm planning for home.
You gonna be rich?
Yes. So Tombstone is alive and well, but there are several times in its history that it's almost died. In 1881 and 1882, there were 2 devastating fires that took out almost all of Allen Street's business district. One of the few buildings that has survived is the Birdcage Theater behind us. We're the Birdcage! It took almost $500,000 to rebuild this area. That's $500,000 in 1880s money, not today's. So after the 2 devastating fires, we then had the mine close. And that's what the town survived on, was mining. It was a mining town. So when that happened, most of the residents left Tombstone to die. But luckily, not all of them did. And luckily, we had a TV show about Wyatt Earp's life that has reborn the interest in Tombstone. And through that small TV show, we got our tourism here.
Coming up here on the right and on the corner, they use it for a rock shop. Originally, this was the home of Morgan Earp and his wife when he was murdered at the Campbell and Apple. Morgan also lived here when he was the deputy for his brother Virgil. I noticed how much smaller his home was than his neighbor. Personally, I think he had the most convenient home of anybody in Tombstone.
It's a rock shop.
Reason why, because see here in his backyard, he had the Circle K and the Family Dollar.
So you can't go to Tombstone without talking about the shootout at the OK Corral.
So we're actually in the OK Corral. This was the original corrals that the horses would be stabled in. So over this way, behind me, is going to be the open field that was right behind the OK Corral that the gunfight actually happened at. We're going to go watch the fight. We bought tickets, so with your tickets, you get a copy of the epitaph. You get to see like the exhibit here. You get to watch the show. So, and then they have a historama inside that you get to.
So this shootout lasted only 30 to 60 seconds and has lasted through history. It is one of the most famous gunfights in all of America.
Okay, so the cost of the gunfight and everything like that was only $10 a person for all the stuff you get. So I think it's totally worth it. I'm excited to watch.
So you have the Clantons and the McLowrys versus the Earps. Nobody really knows who started it, who's in the right, who's in the wrong. We have the last man standing telling the story, and that was Wyatt Earp. So we get everything from his point of view. And also, it technically wasn't even at the OK Corral. It was right behind the OK Corral on Fremont Street.
That's what the gunfight originally was called, the gunfight on Fremont Street, not the OK Corral. Newspaper in Hollywood started calling it that because it helped sale. Real gunfight happened right here on Fremont Street, behind the open lot at the OK Corral, next door to Doc Holliday's apartment.
The gunfight at the OK Corral. It didn't happen at the OK Corral.
So this is actually Fremont Street and where the actual OK Corral gunfight happened. Now, as I said before, that Wyatt was the last man standing. So his brothers and Doc Holliday all survived, as well as Ike and one other of the other gunmen. But he died of his wounds shortly after. But by the time Hollywood got a hold of the stories and the legends, only Wyatt Earp lived. So here you can go in and you can see the area where the gunfight happened. People wonder, is it haunted? We don't know. It is right next to the photography place, just like it says in all accounts. Now, Wyatt Earp, he wasn't the greatest guy either, and he was really trying to get into Hollywood. So we're not sure how much of it is exaggerated, how much is really true. That's really up to you to do the research and decide for yourself. Because most of the cowboys are dead by the end of the shootout, we don't really have their side. We just have the Earp side. And that's basically what we celebrate here in Tombstone. We're here at Boot Hill Cemetery in Tombstone. It's one of the must-sees when you come to visit. They have some really incredible things to see if you're into cemeteries. So, Boot Hill was established in 1879 until 1884 when its last resident was interred. After that, they did start using a new cemetery in Tombstone, and many of the residents here were moved there, but not all of them. In the 1920s, Boot Hill started to become disheveled, overran. It's just started being very shabby. In 1929, the editor of the Epitaph came to pay respects to his late wife and saw what a mess it had become. So he was the one who really spearheaded revamping Boot Hill. By that time, though, a lot of people, all the tombstones, they're wooden, they were gone. They didn't know exactly where or when or who these people were. So they talked to the older generation and they did their best to mark all the graves they knew of. So there are a lot of graves that say unknown. It brings me to a good point. This is a real cemetery and also kind of a fake cemetery. Like Les Moore is not a real person. His tombstone is one of levity. However, his site, there may be someone there. So all of, these graves, they did their best to mark where they were, but they might be the wrong direction or not exactly right, but they did their best. So we're going to go point out a few of the important ones or the well-known ones, and we'll take you along. So here at Boot Hill Cemetery, probably the most famous residents here are the men that fell at the OK Corral. So here's where we know for sure the 3 bodies lay. Now, the only question is where they are laying. It might be just mixed up, but they are all under this pile. Yeah, it's actually very fascinating. This is because it was such a big deal even back then. All the old timers do remember that this is the actual location. So this is the grave of Old Man Clanton, their father. So some interesting information about him is he actually was involved in the Lincoln County Wars back before Billy the Kid was involved. Now, who Billy the Kid worked for was Mr. Tunstall, who Mr. Clanton had issues with. So Old Man Clanton, he was just one of the early people in the Lincoln County War issues that had started. He was a very minor player when it came to things, but I just thought it was very interesting that his sons were such a major part of the OK Corral, and he was involved in the Lincoln County Wars area back before Billy the Kid. So this is the said tombstone of John Heath. Now, John Heath, he was part of the Bisbee Massacre, where they planned a robbery. They weren't patient. They got very little money, and he ended up killing a lot of people. One of them was a woman and a child. And this devastated Bisbee. They were up in arms. So they were captured. They were brought here to Tombstone for trial. Well, the people came up from Bisbee, pulled him out of jail, and they lynched him. There's a famous picture of him being hung on a pole, actually in C.S. Fry's building at the OK Corral. Well, when he did die, they took him to the undertaker, and from there, they put him on a train and shipped him to his wife in Texas. So he has never actually been buried here in Tombstone's Boot Hill. But because he does have such a prominent place in its history, they chose to put a marker up about him here. So the fun thing about Tombstone's Boot Hill is it is real and not real all at the same time. So we have the Clantons and the McClary bodies over there, which are real and are historic. And then we have Les Moore here. He was shot with 4 slugs from a .44, no less, no more, who never existed. We've seen this tombstone at Knott's and other places because it's very amusing to think of someone being shot. But he's never existed as far as we can find research-wise. There is no record of him here or anywhere else. But it's a fun place to come visit.